On the planet Zoria, the relentless pace of life is evident in every aspect of society. The air buzzes with energy as Zolorians, known for their boundless vigor, rush through their daily tasks, always striving to outdo one another. Their world is a tapestry of towering cities and intricate machinery, all designed to support a lifestyle where constant activity is the norm. From a young age, Zolorians are taught that success is measured by how much one achieves in the shortest amount of time. This culture of ceaseless competition permeates every facet of life, leaving no room for those who do not keep up. Kira, however, is different. Her eyes, unlike the sharp, alert gaze of her peers, often drift into the distance, lost in thought. Her movements, unhurried and deliberate, stand out in a society that prizes speed and efficiency. She spends her days in quiet contemplation, pondering the mysteries of life rather than rushing through it. This makes her an anomaly in a world where introspection is seen as a weakness. Kira's gentle demeanor and thoughtful nature are qualities that should be cherished, but instead, they render her an outcast. Her race labels her as inactive, a term used with disdain, as it implies laziness and a lack of ambition. The ostracism Kira faces is palpable. Whispered insults follow her wherever she goes, and the cold stares of her fellow Zolorians cut deeper than any physical wound. She is excluded from social gatherings, her presence seen as a blemish on the community's reputation. Even her family, though not openly hostile, treats her with a subtle distance, their disappointment in her palpable. Kira often finds herself alone, wandering through the quieter parts of the city where the hum of activity is less intense. These moments of solitude are both a solace and a reminder of her alienation. The weight of her society's rejection presses heavily on her heart, and though she tries to remain strong, the emotional toll is undeniable. Every day, she feels the sting of being seen as less, as unworthy of the world she inhabits. Despite the pain, a fire burns within Kira, one that refuses to be extinguished by the harsh judgment of others. She knows that her worth is not defined by the narrow standards of her society. There is more to life than constant motion and achievement. Kira's contemplative nature allows her to see things that others overlook, to appreciate the beauty in the small, quiet moments of existence. But proving this to her people is no small feat. The desire to show them that her way of being is not a flaw but a different kind of strength begins to grow within her. She feels a deep yearning to find a place where she belongs, a purpose that aligns with her true self. Driven by this inner conflict, Kira makes a decision that will change her life forever. She will leave the only home she has ever known and venture into the unknown, in search of something that will give her life meaning. The decision is not made lightly. She understands the risks and the challenges that lie ahead. But the thought of remaining in a world where she is seen as nothing more than an inactive burden is unbearable. With a heavy heart but a determined spirit, Kira sets out on her journey, leaving behind the city that has been both her home and her prison. She does not know what she will find, but she is certain that she must find it, if only to prove to herself that she is more than what her society believes. Kira moved through the dense, uncharted wilderness with a sense of determination. The path was treacherous, overgrown with thick, alien vegetation that seemed to resist her passage. The Forbidden Zone was a place of myths and warnings, a region her people avoided out of fear and superstition. Yet, it was precisely this fear that drew Kira to it. She was no longer bound by the expectations of her society. She sought something different, something that might justify her existence. The air here was different, cooler and more still, as if the very land had been forgotten by time. As she ventured deeper, the familiar sounds of her world faded, replaced by an eerie silence that both unsettled and intrigued her. Each step was a departure from the life she knew, and with each step, she felt herself drawing closer to whatever it was that awaited her. After hours of navigating the treacherous terrain, Kira stumbled upon an ancient structure, half buried in the earth and overgrown with alien flora. It was unlike anything she had seen before, smooth, metallic, and adorned with symbols that did not belong to her world. Her heart raced with a mixture of fear and excitement as she approached the relic. The structure had an aura of mystery, as if it held secrets long forgotten by the galaxy. Kira carefully examined the markings, tracing them with her fingers, feeling a strange connection to the object. It was clear that this was not something of Zolorian origin. The design was too intricate, too precise. As she explored further, she found what appeared to be an entrance, a small hatch that had been partially uncovered by the shifting earth. With a deep breath, she pried it open, revealing a dark passageway that led into the heart of the relic. Inside, the air was stale and cold, a stark contrast to the outside world. The passageway led to a central chamber, where Kira's eyes were drawn to a peculiar object resting on a pedestal. It was a device, small enough to fit in her hand, yet it exuded an undeniable power. As she reached out to touch it, a surge of energy pulsed through her body, filling her mind with visions of distant stars and unfamiliar worlds. The device hummed softly in response to her touch, as if recognizing her presence. It was then that she realized this relic was not just a piece of history, it was a conduit, a link to something far beyond her understanding. As she examined it further, the device suddenly activated, projecting a holographic map of the galaxy. Kira watched in awe as the map zoomed in on a specific location, a distant star system far from Zoria. Her curiosity piqued, she studied the coordinates, wondering what they could mean. Before she could process the information, the device emitted a signal, a burst of energy that shot out into the void of space. Unbeknownst to Kira, the signal had been received by a distant human outpost, a small research station on the fringes of known space. The humans, surprised by the unexpected transmission, quickly traced its origin back to Zoria, a planet they had long assumed to be uninhabited by intelligent life. The transmission was garbled, a mix of data and static, but it was enough to spark their interest. They had been exploring the galaxy for centuries, cataloging ancient civilizations and lost technologies, but this was something new, something unexpected. The team, composed of seasoned explorers and scientists, immediately set to work deciphering the signal, curious about who, or what, had sent it. As they filtered through the data, they began to realize that this was no ordinary transmission. It was a distress signal, an ancient SOS encoded in a language they recognized as human. The humans, led by Commander Ethan Gray, a veteran explorer with a reputation for uncovering the galaxy's most well-kept secrets, made contact with Kira through the device. The initial communication was difficult, a mix of gestures and fragmented words as they struggled to understand each other. Yet, despite the barriers, there was a mutual sense of curiosity and respect. The humans were intrigued by Kira's story, her journey to the Forbidden Zone, and the discovery of the relic. They had encountered many alien races in their travels, but Kira's quiet strength and determination stood out. Commander Gray, in particular, saw in her a kindred spirit, someone who was not defined by the expectations of her people. He encouraged his team to establish a dialogue with Kira, eager to learn more about her world and the relic she had discovered. As the communication continued, the humans began to piece together the significance of the relic. It was a remnant of an ancient human expedition, one that had ventured into the far reaches of the galaxy long before the Zolorians had even developed space travel. The device Kira had found was a beacon, a distress signal left behind by the expedition's last survivors. It was a link to a forgotten chapter of human history, and Kira had unwittingly become a part of it. The humans, recognizing the importance of the discovery, offered to assist Kira in uncovering the relic's secrets. They knew that this could be the key to bridging the gap between their two worlds, a way to forge a new understanding between their races. Kira, in turn, felt a growing connection to the humans, who saw value in her contemplative nature rather than dismissing it as a flaw. For the first time in her life, she felt truly understood. The initial communication between Kira and the human explorers was fraught with difficulties. Their languages were vastly different, and even the concept of communication itself seemed to differ between their species. Kira struggled to express her thoughts through the limited vocabulary she had picked up, while the humans relied on their advanced translation devices, which only partially bridged the gap. Misunderstandings were common, and there were moments of frustration on both sides. But despite these challenges, there was a shared determination to understand one another. The humans were patient, taking the time to explain their words and gestures, while Kira, with her contemplative nature, carefully observed and learned. Over time, they began to find common ground, using simple concepts and emotions to convey their messages. Small breakthroughs in communication led to a growing sense of mutual respect and curiosity. As their understanding deepened, the exchange of knowledge and culture began to flourish. The humans introduced Kira to the history and achievements of their civilization, sharing stories of their exploration of the galaxy, their technological advancements, and their diverse cultures. In return, Kira shared the traditions and philosophies of her people, though she focused on the aspects of her culture that resonated with her own values. The humans were particularly fascinated by Kira's approach to life, her ability to find meaning in stillness and introspection. They saw in her a wisdom that contrasted sharply with the frenetic pace of their own lives. For the first time, Kira's contemplative nature was not just tolerated, but appreciated. The humans valued her insights, recognizing that there was strength in her quiet observation and deep thinking. This cultural exchange became a bridge, not only between their worlds but also between their hearts and minds. As days turned into weeks, the bond between Kira and the human crew grew stronger. They no longer saw her as an inactive outcast but as a valued member of their team. Kira, who had always felt out of place among her own people, found herself embraced by these strangers from another world. They treated her as an equal, consulting her on decisions and seeking her opinion on matters both large and small. The humans admired her calm demeanor and thoughtful approach, qualities that often helped them navigate the challenges of their mission. Kira, in turn, found herself opening up to them, sharing her thoughts and feelings in a way she had never done before. The trust that had been slowly built now blossomed into a genuine friendship, one that transcended the differences in their species and cultures. Through this growing connection, Kira began to undergo a profound internal transformation. For so long, she had seen herself through the eyes of her society, believing that her contemplative nature was a flaw that set her apart in a negative way. But now, surrounded by people who valued her for who she was, she began to see herself in a new light. The acceptance and encouragement she received from the humans allowed her to embrace her unique qualities, recognizing them as strengths rather than weaknesses. Kira no longer felt the need to conform to the expectations of her race. Instead, she found the courage to be true to herself. This newfound confidence filled her with a sense of purpose and belonging that she had never known before. She was no longer just an outcast, she was Kira, a bridge between worlds, with a voice and a value all her own. Kira knew that her journey with the humans had changed her, but it wasn't enough to find peace within herself. She needed to face her own people, to prove that what they saw as a flaw was, in fact, her greatest strength. The decision to return to her home world was not an easy one. She understood that her society would not easily accept the knowledge and experiences she had gained. But she felt an undeniable pull to go back, to confront the very beliefs that had cast her out. Her time with the humans had taught her that true strength lay in staying true to oneself, even in the face of overwhelming opposition. With a resolute heart, Kira made the decision to return, not just for herself, but to challenge the deeply ingrained norms of her society. When Kira set foot on her home soil, the air around her was thick with tension. Word of her return spread quickly, and soon a crowd gathered, their eyes filled with suspicion and disdain. They had expected her to disappear into obscurity, not to return with newfound purpose. Whispers of mockery and doubt rippled through the crowd as they observed her, their skepticism palpable. Kira felt the weight of their judgment, but she did not waver. She stood tall, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to the frenzied energy of those around her. The leaders of her society, the ones who had labeled her inactive, stepped forward, their expressions a mix of curiosity and contempt. They demanded to know why she had returned, what purpose she thought she could serve in a world that valued action above all else. In response, Kira revealed the relic she had brought back with her, holding it up for all to see. The ancient device, with its strange markings and undeniable power, drew gasps from the crowd. But it was not just the relic itself that held their attention. It was the knowledge and wisdom that Kira had gained from the humans. She spoke of the lessons she had learned, of the value in contemplation and introspection, and how these qualities had allowed her to see and understand things that others could not. Her words were met with resistance, as her people struggled to accept a worldview so different from their own. But Kira pressed on, explaining how the relic, a symbol of an ancient civilization, had been preserved and rediscovered not through force or action, but through careful thought and quiet perseverance. She challenged their narrow-minded views, urging them to see that true strength comes in many forms, not just in constant motion. Despite her passionate words, the leaders were not convinced. They could not simply abandon the values that had shaped their society for generations. Instead, they proposed a challenge, a trial that would test whether Kira's newfound strength and wisdom could hold up against the very forces that had once driven her out. The challenge was grueling, designed to push her to her limits, both physically and mentally. It was a test that no Inactive had ever faced before, let alone survived. But Kira was no longer the person they once knew. The trials she had endured with the humans had prepared her for this moment. She faced the challenge with the same calm resolve that had carried her through her darkest days. Each test required not only physical endurance but also the wisdom to know when to act and when to hold back, when to speak and when to listen. As the trial unfolded, it became clear that Kira had transformed into someone her society had never imagined, someone who could navigate the balance between action and reflection, strength and wisdom. By the end of the trial, the skeptical murmurs of the crowd had turned to stunned silence. Kira had not only survived but had excelled, demonstrating a kind of strength that defied their expectations. She had shown them that being inactive did not mean being weak or useless, but rather possessing a different kind of power, one that was equally vital and necessary for the survival of their race. Kira approached the final stages of the challenge with a clear mind and steady heart. Each obstacle she faced required her to draw upon the lessons she had learned from her time with the humans. When confronted with the test of physical strength, she did not rely on brute force alone but combined it with the patience and strategy she had cultivated. When the challenge demanded quick thinking, she used her ability to observe and analyze before acting, allowing her to make decisions that others might have overlooked in haste. The final task, a mental puzzle that had confounded many before her, was where Kira truly shone. She did not rush to solve it but instead took her time, contemplating the problem from all angles. Her methodical approach, honed by years of introspection, led her to the solution. As she completed the challenge, a wave of relief and accomplishment washed over her. She had proven, to herself and to her people, that her way of being was not a weakness but a strength. The reactions of her society were as varied as the individuals within it. Some could not let go of their long-held beliefs and continued to scorn her, unable to accept that Kira's success could be anything more than a fluke. These voices were loud, filled with denial and bitterness, clinging to the notion that only relentless action was worthy of respect. But there were others whose perspectives began to shift. They saw in Kira a different kind of heroism, one that did not rely on the frenetic energy they had always valued. These individuals started to question the rigid norms of their society, realizing that there was room for more than one way of living. Kira's victory planted seeds of doubt in the minds of those who had never considered that contemplation and patience could be powerful in their own right. As the days passed, the support for Kira grew. What had started as a few voices began to swell into a significant portion of the population. These people now viewed her as a symbol of quiet strength and resilience, someone who had the courage to challenge the status quo and emerge victorious. Kira's ultimate acceptance by her society was not a sudden shift but a gradual process, as more and more individuals came to appreciate the value of her approach to life. She was no longer seen as an outcast but as a pioneer who had expanded the understanding of what it meant to be strong and capable. Kira's success did not erase the challenges she had faced, but it did redefine her place within her community. Her people began to see her as a beacon of hope, a reminder that there was strength in diversity and that different perspectives could coexist and enrich their world. With this new recognition came new responsibilities. Kira embraced her role as a bridge between her people and the humans, understanding that her journey had given her a unique perspective that could benefit both worlds. She became an advocate for a more balanced and inclusive culture, one that valued both action and reflection, speed and patience. Her experiences with the humans allowed her to introduce new ideas and practices to her society, fostering a greater understanding and appreciation for the strengths that had once been dismissed. Kira's leadership was not about imposing her will but about guiding her people toward a broader view of what was possible. In this role, she found a sense of fulfillment and purpose that she had long sought, knowing that she had finally carved out a place where she truly belonged.